Alright, this is Greg Dunnigan, picking up on part 2 of the presentation for GIS 540. When we left off in part 1, I had just brought up the conversion tool, which we launched from a button on a toolbar. I'll go through the export steps first. Those are a little more straightforward. So if I click export, and then the next one down is going to allow me to pick the type of file that I want. I want to export to a KML file. When you export, the single is defaulted. This workspace folder is the workspace where the KML file is going to end up. So I'm going to add a new folder just for the presentation. Let's call it KML, and I'll pick it. And now I'm going to browse to the shapefile that I want to export. We'll go to C and then the temp folder, and we'll just pick one of these shapefiles. Let's say the fires shapefile. We'll say OK, and OK again, and this should run pretty quickly. It ran in 2 seconds. I'm going to bring Windows Explorer over. I can see the KML folder, so it created a fires KMG file. Slide that out of the way. I'm going to bring up Google Earth now, and when I slide that fires KMZ file in, it'll zoom in on where those fires were. Looks like it's way out in Massachusetts on the Cape. So we'll minimize Google Earth now. Say close. Now we'll bring up the conversion tool again. We'll export a GPX file this time. So we'll say export, and GPX single is still there. We'll pick the workspace. We're going to create a folder here. Call this GPX. So we'll pick that, say add. Now we're going to pick the file to export. We'll go back to C temp. And we'll go down and we'll pick, let's see, maybe the cover 63p. So we're going to export this to a GPX file, so we'll say OK. The conversion tool will run. And it's done for the purpose of the presentation. I did pause the presentation while it finished. It took 37 seconds to run that. So if I say close, the only real way I can test this is by bringing up the Garmin Basecamp. We'll say new list. Then we want to import a GPX file into this list. So it's going to let me browse to a GPX file. So if I go to GIS 540, there's that GPX folder that I created, and the cover 63p GPX file which just got created. Say open, and it will import. And let's see, we need to zoom to it. So we say show on map, and right around Gettysburg is a GPX file that we created. So we'll minimize that. So now we'll open up the My Conversion tool again. We'll say export. This time we're going to export a shape file. Pick a workspace. Create a workspace called zip. Pick it. Now we're going to pick a shape file to export. I'm just going to pick one of these shape files and say OK. And this will go through pretty quickly. It's done in 5 seconds. If I bring Windows Explorer back over onto the screen, in that zip folder that we just created, there is a zip file which could be then emailed out to whoever needs it. Alright, so moving on, now we'll show some of the import procedures, and I'll show you one of the problems that I'm having if I click import. Now this time I'm going to import a KML file. I'm going to say import multiple KML files, and this time I'm going to just pick the workspace. If I go into my data folder, I've got a folder called KML, and there's a couple KML files in here. Notice when I say multiple, the input file is grayed out. So when I say OK, we'll watch this And if you look over in the table of contents, you'll see the problem that I'm coming across. I'm not exactly sure how to get around it. You see the first one converts and gets inserted into the table of contents. The second one, and then they go away. I'm not really sure why that happens. If I click close, they're gone. Interestingly enough, if I have a toolbox which has got a version of the conversion tool, which is just a Python script which points at the same import and export scripts that have all the classes and procedures in it. And if I were to run it here, everything works fine. It's just within the PYT tool that I have the problems. And I'm really not sure why that is. That's just the way it's happening. So anyway, moving on, I can import a GPX file. I can import multiple GPX files if I want to, or I can import single. I'm going to say multiple GPX files and say add. Say OK, and we'll let this one run. It doesn't take too long. You can see I'm returning messages back to the user so they can see what's going on. So you saw over in the table of contents the layers were there and then they vanished. I think it has something to do with intermediate data and how the PYT file is treating intermediate data. So if you have any ideas about that, I'd love to hear them. If I go back to where that data was created, if I go in that GPX folder, those 4 GPX files are there. The KML files are there that got created in bulk. I could do those one at a time also. And lastly, real quick, I'll show the import of shapefiles, and we'll show you what that looks like. I pick shapefile, and now I'm going to pick a workspace, and then so I've got these folders here. So for example, this folder 34265 has got multiple GPS files in here, and we want to merge all these together and get one output. So I'm just going to pick the top level and say OK, and I'll say OK again. And we'll let this run through. I'm going to pause the presentation while this goes through. It takes about 2 minutes to run. Alright, so we're picking the recording back up as we're getting to the end of this script. If you keep your eye on the table of contents, you may see the shapefile flash again like it was doing for the other ones. It's returning some final messages. It's returning messages all along. If you saw that flashed real quick. So I just say close. We can go look at that file, or go look at that data. We're in the 34265 folder. The final output is called buffer final, and that's what the final output looks like. There's a bunch of individual stuff in here. It's converting these track 2D shapes. And so those are what the initial shapes look like, and there's a bunch of them in there, and your final product is a shapefile that shows the whole area. So I guess that's it, and I look forward to any feedback you can give. Thanks.